Once a sastri from North India was talking with Sri Bhagavan at Virupaksha cave when Echamal arrived with food, looking agitated and shivering. When asked what was the matter, she said that as she was passing Sadguru Swami cave, she thought she saw Sri Bhagavan and a stranger standing beside the path. She continued on her way, but heard a voice, "Why go farther up when I am here?" She turned again to look, and there was no one there. She hastened on to the ashram in fear. "What, Swami?" Sastri exclaimed. "While you are talking to me here, you manifest yourself to this lady on the way here, and do not show any such sign of grace to me." And Sri Bhagavan explained that Echamal's visions were due to her constant concentration on him. She was by no means alone in having visions of Sri Bhagavan, though I know of no other case when the vision caused fear. Years later, a Western visitor, an elderly gentleman, had come to the ashram at the foot of the hill. After lunch, he set out to explore the hill, but in doing so he lost his way. Tired with the heat and exertion, not knowing which way to go, he was in a desperate plight, when Sri Bhagavan came past and showed him the way back to the ashram. People were already anxious when he got back and asked him what had happened, and he said, "I just went out for a stroll on the hill and got lost. The heat and exertion were a little too much for me, and I was in a bad way. I don't know what I should have done, but for the fact that Bhagavan happened to come that way and directed me to the ashram." And then everyone was astonished, because Bhagavan had never left the hall. Rudraraj Pandey, the principal of the Trichandra College at Kathmandu, Nepal, went with a friend to worship at the great temple in town before leaving Tiruvannamalai. The inner temple gates were thrown open, and my guide took us into the interior, which was rather dark. A small oiled wick flame was flickering a few yards in front of us. The young voice of my companion shouted, "Arunachala," and all my attention was directed to the one purpose of seeing the image or lingam, which symbolizes the Supreme Lord, eternal and unmanifest, which was inside the sanctum sanctorum. But strange to say, instead of the lingam, I saw the image of the Maharshi Bhagavan Sri Ramana, his smiling countenance, his brilliant eyes looking at me. And what is more strange, it is not one Maharshi that I see, or two, or three, but hundreds. I see the same smiling countenance, those lustrous eyes. I see them wherever I may look in the sanctum sanctorum. And my eyes catch not the full figure of the Maharshi, but only the smiling face from the chin above. I am in rapture and beside myself with inexpressible joy. That bliss and calmness of mind I then felt how can words describe. Tears of joy flowed down my cheeks. I went to the temple to see Lord Arunachala, and I found the living Lord as he graciously revealed himself. I can never forget the deep, intimate experience I had in the ancient temple. Nevertheless, Sri Bhagavan never encouraged interest in visions or desire for them, nor did they occur to all devotees or disciples. One of the most devoted adherents of Sri Bhagavan at this time was Seshadri Swami, the same Seshadri who had kept schoolboys away when he first came to Tiruvannamalai. He now lived on the hill, lower down than Virupaksha cave, and paid frequent visits there. He had attained a high spiritual state and had grace and beauty, which shows in the surviving portraits. There was something bird-like and aloof about him. He was not often accessible. He would not always speak, and when he did, his speech was often enigmatic. He had left home at the age of 17 and had received initiation into mantra the sacred formula, and japa, the invocations, that develop occult powers, sometimes sitting up the whole night in a cemetery, invoking the Shakti or creative energy. Not only would he always encourage devotees to go to Ramana Swami, as he called him, but he would on occasion identify himself with him. He could read thoughts, and if Sri Bhagavan had told a devotee anything, he would say, "I told you so-and-so, why do you ask again?" Or, "Why don't you do it?" It was only rarely that he would give initiation into some mantra, and if the supplicant was already a devotee of Ramana Swami, he would always refuse, bidding him remain there where the supreme spiritual guidance resided. On one rare occasion, he actually exhorted a devotee to undertake active sadhana, the quest for enlightenment. It happened it was a certain Subramanya Mudalai, who, together with his wife and mother, used to spend most of his income preparing food for sadhus who had renounced the world. Like Echamal, they took food daily to Sri Bhagavan in his ashram, and to Seshadri Swami too when they could find him. And yet, at the same time, Subramanya was a landowner and was involved in litigation in trying to increase property. Seshadri Swami, grieving that one so devoted should be so attached, advised him to give up such cares and devote himself entirely to the service of God and to striving for spiritual development, self-realization. "You see," he said, "my younger brother has an income of 10,000 rupees, and I have an income of 1,000 rupees. Why shouldn't you try to get an income of at least 100? The younger brother was Ramana Swami, and the income, spiritual attainment. When Subramanya still held back, Seshadri Swami became insistent and warned him that he was committing the mortal sin of slaying a Brahmin. Having more faith in Sri Bhagavan, Subramanya asked him whether this was true, and Sri Bhagavan interpreted, "Yes, you can be said to commit the murder of Brahman by not realizing that you are Brahman." Seshadri Swami once sat in the mango cave, gazing fixedly at Sri Bhagavan in order to read his thoughts. However, the mind of Sri Bhagavan, merged as it was in the tranquility of the self as pure spirit, showed no ripple of thought. So he was baffled and said, "It is not clear what this one is thinking." And Sri Bhagavan remained silent. After a pause, Seshadri Swami added, "If one worships the Lord Arunachala, he will grant salvation." At this time, Bhagavan asked, "Who is it that worships, and who is the worshipped?" And Seshadri Swami broke into a laugh, saying, "That is just what is not clear." Then Sri Bhagavan expounded at length the doctrine of the One Self, manifested in all the forms of the universe, and yet unmanifested and utterly unchanged by manifestation, the one reality, and the self of him who worships. Seshadri Swami listened patiently, and at the end he rose and said, "I can't say. All this is dark to me. At any rate, I worship." So saying, he turned to the crest of the hill and prostrated himself to it again and again, and then departed. And yet Seshadri Swami also would sometimes speak from the standpoint of unity, seeing all things as manifestations of spirit. But from whatever point of view he spoke, it was liable to be with a dry, disconcerting humor. In fact, one day a certain Narayana Swami found him standing staring at a buffalo and asked, "What is Swami looking at?" "I am looking at this." "Is it the buffalo Swami is looking at?" And then pointing at the buffalo, Seshadri Swami bade him, "Tell me what this is." "It is a buffalo," he answered innocently, whereupon Seshadri Swami burst out, "Is it a buffalo? A buffalo? You buffalo! Call it Brahman." and in so saying he turned and went away. Seshadri Swami died in January 1929. As is the accepted practice in the case of a saint, his body was not cremated but buried. Sri Bhagavan stood by silently watching. He is still revered at Tiruvannamalai, and on the anniversary of his death, his portrait is taken in procession through the town. During the early years that Sri Bhagavan spent on the hill, the process of return to outer activity was gradually proceeding. He began to walk about and explore the hill, to read books and write interpretations. A certain Padmanabha Swami, known also as Jate Swami, on account of his matted hair, had an ashram on the hill and kept there a number of Sanskrit books on spiritual knowledge and on applied sciences with a spiritual basis, such as Ayurveda. Sri Bhagavan would visit him and glance through them, immediately mastering their content and so fixing it in his memory that he could not merely repeat it, but give chapter and verse. And Padmanabha Swami would often appeal to him as an authority when any point of doctrine was raised.